Ryan's ship shuddered violently as the warning lights flashed across the cockpit. He gripped the controls tightly, trying to steady the vessel, but the problem was clear. The power core had suffered a critical failure. Floating near the edge of the Xylan star system, Ryan realized he had only one chance. He opened the escape hatch and ejected just before the ship spun out of control. The small escape pod plunged toward the surface of an unknown planet. The landing was rough. The pod skidded across the rocky terrain, finally coming to a stop against a cluster of jagged stones. Ryan groaned, his body aching from the sudden impact. He unstrapped himself and took a deep breath. The planet's sky was a strange shade of green, with clouds swirling in thick patterns overhead. Alien trees with tall, twisted trunks surrounded him. Their leaves shimmered faintly under the dim light. Silence stretched across the landscape. As he examined the surroundings, Ryan noticed movement. At first, he thought it was his imagination. Then, a figure appeared between the trees. It was small, not taller than a human child, but its body shape was unfamiliar. Its skin glowed faintly, and its eyes were wide with fear. Ryan raised his hand slowly, showing he meant no harm. "You're going to be fine," he said calmly. The figure froze completely. It held a small device tightly against its chest, and its eyes widened in what seemed like shock or alarm. Ryan's heart sank. He had expected relief or hesitation, not this reaction. Clearly, the words had been understood differently. He realized he needed to approach with care. "I am not here to hurt you," Ryan said, lowering his hands. He moved slowly toward the figure, keeping his posture open and non-threatening. The alien, who Ryan would later learn was named Vera, did not move. Her large eyes studied him carefully. She muttered a series of sounds that Ryan could not understand, but the tone was sharp, almost defensive. Ryan examined his surroundings. The planet seemed untouched, almost abandoned, but the presence of Vera suggested someone lived here or had recently lived here. He decided to focus on the immediate need, helping her without causing more fear. From his kit, he pulled a first aid pack. "I can help you," he said, showing the supplies clearly. He placed them on the ground a short distance away. Vera's eyes flicked to the pack, but she did not move. Time passed slowly. Ryan realized that his usual human way of comforting someone might not work with this species. Every gesture mattered. He knelt a few feet away, keeping eye contact but not staring too intensely. He mimicked a smile, hoping to show friendliness. Vera's grip on the device tightened, and she stepped back slightly. Ryan understood. Words were not enough. He needed to show trust through action. He carefully removed a small water bottle from his pack and placed it near Vera, then backed away. Vera hesitated, looking at him as if measuring the risk. After what felt like an eternity, she slowly reached for the bottle, her movements cautious. Ryan did not move, letting her have control of her choice. She drank quickly, then looked at him again. Ryan nodded gently. He could see a small change. The initial shock in her eyes was still there, but curiosity now mixed with caution. Suddenly, a sound echoed through the trees. A low, mechanical hum followed by sharp clicks. Ryan stiffened. "Stay close," he whispered, instinctively moving in front of Vera. She stiffened at his words but did not run. They both crouched behind a cluster of rocks. From the shadows, figures emerged. Alien patrols, armed and alert, scanning the area. Ryan's mind raced. He had to protect Vera, but he also needed to remain calm. Ryan used a small flare from his kit, tossing it to the side to create a distraction. The patrol paused, then moved toward the light. Vera's eyes widened at the maneuver. She looked at him with a mixture of surprise and something else, something that could be interpreted as trust. For the first time, she allowed herself to move closer behind him, following his lead silently. The two of them navigated through the alien forest, Ryan leading carefully, Vera mimicking his movements. Every step had to be cautious. The alien patrol was fast, but Ryan's knowledge of human strategy and improvisation gave them an advantage. He silently counted seconds, estimated distances, and used the terrain to their benefit. Vera began to respond subtly, pointing out obstacles and safe paths using simple gestures. By the time night fell, they reached a small clearing. Ryan allowed himself a moment of relief. Vera finally lowered her device, sitting beside him, still cautious but calmer. He smiled gently. "We will be safe here for now," he said. Vera looked at him, and for a moment, Ryan saw a flicker of gratitude in her wide eyes. Though she had reacted in a way he did not expect at first, Ryan knew the beginning of trust had started. Actions, he realized, spoke louder than words. And on this alien planet, trust would be the first step toward survival. The night on the alien planet was strange and quiet. Glowing plants lit the forest with soft green light. Ryan kept watch while Vera stayed close. She had not spoken much since the crash, but her large eyes followed him constantly. Every small sound seemed to make her tense. Ryan understood. On this planet, everything was unknown, and trust had to be earned slowly. He decided to move deeper into the forest. "We should find better shelter," he said softly. Vera looked at him and tilted her head. She made a few sounds in her language. Ryan did not understand the words, but he noticed the tone. It was not fear this time. It was suggestion. She seemed to want to show him something. Following Vera's gestures, Ryan reached a small clearing surrounded by tall rocks. There were signs of life, footprints and faint marks on the ground. It was clear that other members of Vera's species had been here recently. Ryan motioned for Vera to stay back while he examined the area. The clearing offered protection, but it also had several openings that could allow predators or patrols to enter. Vera stepped forward and pointed to a cluster of vines hanging from a tree. She touched them gently, then gestured toward Ryan. He realized she was showing him a way to cover the openings. Together, they began to work. Ryan lifted rocks and branches while Vera used her small, glowing hands to tie vines across gaps. They were careful not to make noise. The teamwork was silent but effective. After a while, the small shelter took shape. It was simple but safe. Ryan admired Vera's skill. Even though she had been scared at first, she was now showing intelligence and understanding beyond what he expected. "Good work," he said quietly. Vera only looked at him, her eyes reflecting both curiosity and caution. Ryan realized that praising her verbally might not mean much, so he simply smiled and nodded. Once the shelter was secure, Ryan focused on food and water. He opened his pack and found protein bars and purified water. He offered some to Vera, placing them on the ground in front of her. She hesitated, but hunger eventually overcame caution. She took the food slowly, glancing at Ryan with an expression that seemed like acknowledgement. Ryan ate a little too, careful not to appear greedy. Sharing was important. As they ate, the forest seemed to come alive. Strange creatures moved silently among the trees. Some were small, fluttering with wings of light. Others were larger and watched from a distance. Ryan kept his senses alert, noticing movement and sound that Vera did not. He realized that staying calm and careful was the only way to keep them safe. Vera suddenly pointed to the sky, where two moons reflected faint light. Ryan followed her gaze. "Beautiful," he said softly. Vera made a small sound and tilted her head again. It was not a word. It was an emotion. He understood that even though she could not speak his language, she could share feelings. Small moments like this built trust faster than words. The night grew colder. Ryan started a small, contained heat source using parts from his pod. The flames cast shadows across the rocks and plants. Vera moved closer, drawn by the warmth. She sat silently, watching the fire. Ryan did not speak. He knew she needed space to feel safe. Silence, he thought, could be as important as speech. Suddenly, a noise broke the calm. A branch snapped near the edge of the clearing. Both Ryan and Vera froze. Eyes wide, they watched the dark trees. Then, a small creature emerged. It had glowing eyes and long limbs, moving quickly. Ryan instinctively stood in front of Vera. The creature stopped and studied them. Then, as if deciding they were not a threat, it turned and disappeared into the forest. Vera exhaled slowly. Ryan placed a hand gently on the ground near her, not touching her directly but showing reassurance. She looked at him with something that was almost a smile. Ryan realized that her reaction was slowly changing. The fear that had made her stiff and defensive was giving way to understanding. Hours passed, and Ryan kept watch while Vera rested. He thought about their situation. Alone on an unknown planet, with hostile patrols nearby and strange creatures all around, survival depended on more than skill. It depended on trust, patience, and careful observation. Ryan understood that Vera had begun to trust him, not because of his words but because of his actions. By the time dawn approached, the green light of the sky grew brighter. Vera stood and gestured for Ryan to follow. They moved toward a small stream she had discovered earlier. Fresh water was crucial, and Ryan could see that Vera was now guiding him as much as he was protecting her. It was the first true sign of partnership between them. As they drank from the stream, Ryan realized something important. The first words he had spoken, "You're going to be fine," had not worked as he expected. Vera's reaction had been fear and shock. But now, through shared effort, action, and patience, she was beginning to trust him. In this alien world, trust was not given lightly. It was earned. And Ryan knew that earning it was the first step to surviving together. Ryan and Vera moved carefully through the dense forest. The air was thick with humidity, and the strange alien plants brushed against their arms and legs. Ryan kept one hand on the small blade at his belt while the other moved slightly ahead, testing the ground for hidden obstacles. Vera followed silently, her glowing hands lighting the path just enough to avoid tripping. Suddenly, a low hum echoed through the trees. Ryan froze. He had heard this sound before during his patrol missions near the contested star systems. It was the approach of something mechanical, organized, and dangerous. He crouched behind a large rock and signaled Vera to stay close. She pressed herself against his side, her eyes wide and alert. From the shadows, figures emerged. Alien soldiers, armed with advanced weapons, moved with precision, scanning the area. Their patrol was systematic. Ryan knew they had no idea he and Vera were there yet. He studied their movements and whispered to Vera, "Stay calm and follow my lead." Vera nodded slightly, gripping his arm briefly, showing that she was beginning to trust his guidance. Ryan needed a plan. He scanned the surroundings and spotted a shallow ravine to their left. If they could reach it, the patrol might overlook them. He gently pulled Vera along the safest path, careful not to make noise. One wrong step could reveal their position. A patrol drone flew overhead, its sensors sweeping the area. Ryan ducked behind a tree, signaling Vera to do the same. He noticed how Vera instinctively crouched, keeping herself small and out of sight. He was impressed. Her species must have trained this behavior for survival. Ryan thought about how humans adapted to challenges through ingenuity, and he felt a surge of determination to protect her. When the drone moved away, Ryan led Vera toward the ravine. The ground was uneven, and the rocks threatened to slip under their weight. Vera slipped once, and Ryan caught her wrist quickly. She looked at him with gratitude, then continued silently. Their partnership was growing through action, not words. Once they reached the ravine, Ryan used a fallen branch to test the stability of a narrow path along the edge. It held, and they began crossing slowly. Below, the forest floor stretched into shadow, hiding them from view. Ryan signaled Vera to stay close. She followed obediently, her trust in him evident through her calm movements. As they reached the other side, a patrol member's voice echoed through the trees. They had been spotted. Ryan's heart raced. He grabbed a small flare from his belt and tossed it toward a thick patch of vegetation. The bright light flared up, drawing the patrol's attention. They rushed toward the distraction, leaving a small window for Ryan and Vera to move further into the forest. Vera watched in awe as Ryan set a small trap using a few rocks and a fallen branch. The patrol stumbled over it, momentarily slowing their pursuit. Vera made a small sound of surprise, which Ryan interpreted as excitement and appreciation. He smiled briefly but stayed focused. Every second counted. The two moved quickly, using every trick Ryan knew. They jumped over roots, slid under low-hanging branches, and used the shadows to remain unseen. Vera began pointing out obstacles and dangerous areas in her own language, which Ryan understood through her gestures and expressions. For the first time, he felt a true partnership forming between human and alien. After several tense minutes, they reached a clearing that appeared safer. Ryan crouched and caught his breath, keeping a hand near his side for his weapon. Vera stayed behind him, watching the trees nervously but no longer frozen with fear. She seemed to have learned that he would protect her, and she could help in return. Ryan examined the path ahead. They needed to reach a shelter, or they would not survive the day. He spotted a series of rocks arranged like a natural barrier. If they could reach it, they could rest and plan their next move. He gestured for Vera to follow, and she moved closer, mirroring his movements carefully. As they approached the rocks, a larger patrol unit appeared in the distance. Ryan realized they could not outrun them. He whispered to Vera, "We fight smart, not fast. Follow me." He led her behind a large boulder, and together they set up a small diversion using rocks and branches. When the patrol approached, the noise drew them away from the two, buying precious minutes. Finally, Ryan and Vera reached the shelter he had noticed earlier. It was a small cave hidden behind thick vines, providing both protection and cover. They entered cautiously, and Ryan used a small piece of technology from his pack to create a temporary energy shield at the entrance. Vera watched silently, then nodded. She was beginning to trust not only his words but his actions and decisions. Inside the cave, they sat quietly, catching their breath. Ryan offered Vera a small ration from his pack. She accepted without hesitation, showing that she now understood his intentions fully. he realized that surviving together had created a bond stronger than words alone. Ryan looked at Vera and thought about the journey ahead. Hostile patrols were everywhere, the planet was unfamiliar, and dangers lurked at every corner. Yet, in the midst of fear and uncertainty, trust had formed between them. Through patience, courage, and clever thinking, a human and an alien were learning to rely on each other. For the first time since the crash, Ryan felt hope. The patrols were not the only challenge they would face, but with Vera by his side, he knew they had a chance to survive. The night on the alien planet was far from over, but a bond had formed that could carry them through anything. The first light of dawn filtered through the thick alien trees, casting a soft green glow across the forest floor. Ryan and Vera emerged cautiously from their temporary shelter. The night had been long and tense, but the small cave had kept them safe from both patrols and the strange creatures that roamed the forest. Ryan knew they could not stay in one place for long. They needed a more secure shelter, one that would protect them from both weather and enemies. Vera moved beside him, her glowing hands brushing against the plants as they walked. She had begun to trust Ryan, following his lead without hesitation. Each step they took together strengthened their bond. The forest around them was alive with strange sounds, chirps, clicks, and rustling leaves, but Ryan's calm presence kept Vera from panicking. He pointed out safe paths and places to avoid. She nodded, silently acknowledging his guidance. After some time, they reached a rocky hillside. Vera paused and made a series of sounds, then pointed toward a narrow opening partially hidden by thick vines. Ryan approached carefully and peered inside. The opening led to a small cave system that extended deep into the hill. Inside, the walls shimmered faintly, reflecting the green light from outside. It looked like a natural shelter, but it had been used before. Marks on the walls and scattered objects suggested that someone or something had lived there recently. "This could be our safe place," Ryan said softly. Vera tilted her head and stepped inside first, motioning for him to follow. As they explored the cave, Ryan noticed that it had several chambers. Some were small, others larger, and suitable for sleeping or storing supplies. The main chamber had a flat stone floor and walls high enough to block any view from outside. It was the perfect location to rest and plan their next move. Ryan and Vera began to prepare the cave. Using pieces of debris from his crashed pod, Ryan created simple supports for the walls and a small energy barrier at the entrance. Vera watched him carefully and then began helping in her own way. She moved rocks, tied vines, and placed small glowing crystals along the walls. Though she did not speak much, her actions communicated trust and cooperation. Together, they transformed the cave into a secure shelter. Once the preparations were complete, Ryan set up a small area for food and water. He handed Vera a few rations from his pack. She accepted them carefully, her eyes reflecting both curiosity and appreciation. They ate in silence, but it was a comfortable silence, one built on shared effort and mutual respect. For the first time since the crash, Ryan felt a sense of normalcy in this strange alien world. After their meal, Ryan decided it was time to explore further. He wanted to understand the surrounding area and ensure there were no immediate threats nearby. Vera followed, guiding him through small tunnels and narrow passages within the cave system. She showed him hidden openings that led to underground streams and small pools of fresh water. Ryan was impressed by her knowledge. She had grown up on this planet and knew it better than any map could show. As they explored, Ryan noticed faint markings on the walls. Symbols and signs that seemed to indicate direction or warnings. He pointed them out to Vera. She nodded and explained through gestures which areas were safe and which were dangerous. Even though he could not understand the language, the meaning was clear. Cooperation was now their strongest tool. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed through the tunnels. Ryan and Vera froze. The sound was not mechanical, and it did not come from the patrols. It was something larger, something moving within the depths of the cave. Ryan instinctively positioned himself between Vera and the sound. She looked at him, her eyes wide, but she did not run. She trusted him to act, just as he trusted her knowledge of the terrain. From the shadows, a large creature emerged. Its skin was pale and reflective, and its limbs moved gracefully but with power. It observed them quietly. Ryan remained calm, showing no fear. He realized the creature was curious rather than hostile. Vera stepped slightly forward, making soft sounds to communicate peace. The creature tilted its head and, after a moment, moved away deeper into the cave. Ryan exhaled slowly. "That could have been dangerous," he said softly. Vera made a small sound, and Ryan understood it as agreement. Their actions had prevented panic and maintained safety. They had learned to communicate without words, relying on gestures, calm movements, and understanding. As night approached, Ryan and Vera settled in the main chamber of the cave. He set a small heat source using parts from his pod, while Vera arranged her glowing crystals to provide light. Together, they had created a place that was not just safe, but comfortable. Ryan realized that trust and cooperation were as important as any weapon or tool. Vera finally spoke a few words in her language, pointing toward Ryan and then to herself. He nodded, understanding her meaning. She was acknowledging the bond they had formed. In that moment, Ryan knew that despite the dangers of the alien planet, they would survive together. Their partnership had become real, built on action, courage, and mutual respect. For the first time, Ryan felt hope. They were alone on a strange world, but together, they were stronger than any threat that might come their way. The cave was more than shelter, it was the beginning of a new chapter in their story, one where trust and friendship could overcome fear and uncertainty. The day had started quietly, but dark clouds began gathering quickly above the alien forest. The green sky turned a dull gray, and a cold wind swept through the trees. Ryan noticed the change immediately. He had faced storms before, both on human colonies and in deep space, and he knew that shelter and preparation were crucial. He looked at Vera, who had paused, her glowing hands trembling slightly. "We need to secure the cave," Ryan said calmly. Vera nodded. She moved beside him, helping to reinforce the small barriers they had created at the entrance. Using vines and rocks, they strengthened the walls to keep out the heavy wind and possible debris. Ryan admired how quickly Vera adapted, following his instructions and adding her own knowledge of the terrain. Soon, heavy rain began to fall, striking the forest floor and creating small streams along the tunnels of the cave. Ryan checked the energy barrier at the entrance and adjusted it to prevent water from seeping inside. Vera watched him carefully, occasionally making small sounds and gestures that Ryan interpreted as concern for the safety of the crystals she had placed along the walls. He nodded, showing that her efforts mattered and were appreciated. The storm grew stronger. Thunder rumbled across the alien landscape, and the walls of the cave shook under the wind. Ryan realized that the small chamber they had chosen was vulnerable to flooding in some areas. He moved quickly, lifting rocks to redirect water and digging shallow channels to guide it away from their shelter. Vera helped by moving objects to higher ground, showing that she understood the importance of teamwork. As they worked, a large shadow appeared at the entrance of the cave. Ryan instinctively stepped in front of Vera, ready to defend. The shadow belonged to a creature native to the planet, drawn to the cave by the sound of the storm. Its skin reflected the faint light from Vera's crystals, and its long limbs moved cautiously. Ryan stayed calm, knowing that sudden movements could provoke it. Vera made soft sounds and extended her glowing hands toward the creature. It paused, sensing her presence. Slowly, the creature retreated, as if acknowledging her peaceful approach. Ryan realized that her instincts and knowledge of local species were invaluable. He had relied on human tactics to survive, but Vera's understanding of the planet and its creatures was just as important. The storm continued through the day, growing heavier with each passing hour. Ryan and Vera huddled near the center of the main chamber, sharing rations and keeping warm. Ryan noticed that Vera had begun to relax slightly, though her eyes remained alert. The experience had been frightening, but she had proven to herself and to him that she could act decisively when necessary. When the rain slowed, Ryan decided they should explore a safer section of the cave system. Vera led the way, moving confidently through tunnels and narrow passages. She stopped at a small pool of water, its surface still and clear. Ryan bent down and drank carefully, then offered some to Vera. She accepted, smiling faintly. It was a simple gesture, but it showed trust and recognition of their shared efforts. As they moved deeper into the cave, Ryan noticed that some walls were marked with strange symbols. Vera stopped and traced them lightly with her fingers, explaining through gestures which areas were considered sacred and which could be dangerous. Ryan understood enough to respect her guidance, and they avoided areas that might provoke hostile creatures or territorial guardians. By evening, the storm had passed, leaving the forest glistening under dim light. Ryan and Vera returned to the main chamber, where they checked the shelter for any damage. Everything had held. Ryan felt a sense of relief, knowing that their careful preparation and teamwork had kept them safe. Vera arranged her crystals again, lighting the cave and creating a warm atmosphere despite the dampness outside. Sitting quietly, Ryan reflected on the day's events. The storm had tested their survival skills and their partnership. Vera's initial fear had transformed into cautious confidence. She had acted decisively, using her knowledge and instincts to help both of them survive. Ryan realized that survival on this planet would not rely solely on human strength or intelligence, but on the combination of their skills and trust. Vera finally spoke a few words in her language, pointing to Ryan and then to the small pool of water they had found. He nodded, understanding her meaning. It was her way of acknowledging the bond they had formed. Ryan smiled gently, feeling a warmth he had not expected in such a harsh environment. Trust, patience, and cooperation had carried them through the storm. As night fell, they settled near the center of the chamber. The crystals glowed softly, and the cave provided shelter and security. Ryan kept a careful watch, but for the first time since the crash, he felt confident in their ability to survive. Vera rested beside him, her glowing hands folded calmly. The storm had passed, but the lesson remained clear: courage, intelligence, and trust were stronger than fear or danger. In that quiet cave, Ryan and Vera had strengthened more than just their shelter. They had strengthened their bond. The day had been a challenge, but they had faced it together, proving that survival on an alien world was possible when two species worked as one. Ryan had barely finished checking the cave after the storm when he sensed movement outside. His instincts were sharp from years of space missions and survival training. The alien patrols they had evaded before were back, stronger and more organized. He looked at Vera, who was sitting near the glowing crystals, and whispered, "Get ready. We might need to move fast." Vera's large eyes widened, but she did not panic. She had learned from Ryan's calm and careful actions that fear could be controlled. She moved beside him, ready to follow his lead. Together, they prepared for what might come. Ryan checked his small weapons and tools, while Vera adjusted a device she carried, which he now understood could interfere with alien scanners. From the entrance of the cave, a low mechanical hum grew louder. Patrol units emerged through the forest, their scanners sweeping the area. Ryan studied their formation. They were cautious, moving slowly, clearly aware that something or someone was hiding nearby. He realized that stealth alone would not be enough this time. They needed to combine skill, intelligence, and timing. Ryan whispered a plan to Vera. He gestured toward a narrow tunnel that led deeper into the cave system. "Follow me. Stay close and do exactly what I do," he said. Vera nodded, understanding that cooperation was their only chance. They moved silently, using shadows and the uneven terrain to remain hidden. Ryan's heart raced, but his face showed calm, giving Vera confidence. As they advanced, a patrol drone passed near the entrance, its lights scanning for heat and movement. Ryan waited until it was directly overhead, then signaled Vera to hold her position. He used a reflective piece of his pod to redirect the light slightly, creating a momentary blind spot. The drone moved past, unaware of their presence. Vera watched carefully, mimicking his actions and learning the subtle ways of evasion. The patrols were closing in, and time was short. Ryan and Vera reached a narrow chamber where the walls curved inward, creating a natural choke point. Ryan realized they could use it to their advantage. He instructed Vera to stand slightly behind him and activate her device. A soft pulse emitted from it, confusing the scanners of the patrols outside. The sounds of the drones and patrol units shifted, and Ryan knew the aliens were disoriented. Ryan led Vera through the chamber and into a hidden side tunnel. It was tight and dark, but it allowed them to move without being detected. Vera used her glowing hands to light the path minimally, careful not to reveal their location. Ryan followed closely, guiding her with quiet gestures and occasional taps on her shoulder to signal direction. Their movements were synchronized, each trusting the other completely. The tunnel eventually opened into a small underground stream. Fresh water flowed gently, reflecting the faint glow from Vera's hands. Ryan paused to drink quickly, then offered the same to Vera. She drank cautiously, then gestured toward him, her way of saying thanks. The moment of calm was brief. Patrol sounds echoed faintly from above ground, reminding them that they were not safe yet. Ryan scanned the area and noticed an overhang that led upward to the forest floor. It was narrow but climbable. He pointed to it, and Vera followed without hesitation. Together, they climbed carefully, using rocks and roots for support. The forest above was still occupied by patrols, but Ryan had a plan. He motioned for Vera to stay low while he moved ahead to create a diversion. Ryan threw small rocks in one direction, drawing the attention of some patrol units. Their sensors picked up the noise, and a few soldiers moved toward it. Vera seized the moment and slipped quietly behind a cluster of alien trees. Ryan followed a moment later, and they both crouched low, hidden from view. They had managed to evade the main patrol, thanks to timing, clever thinking, and cooperation. Once they were at a safer distance, Ryan allowed himself a small smile. Vera looked at him, her expression showing relief mixed with admiration. They had survived another encounter by working together. Ryan realized that actions, not words, had built their bond. Vera had trusted him, and he had relied on her knowledge of the planet. As night fell, the forest became quiet again. Ryan and Vera found a shallow cave hidden under a rocky outcrop. It was not perfect, but it was safe for the night. They settled inside, Ryan using his tools to reinforce the entrance slightly while Vera arranged her glowing crystals for light and comfort. The day had tested their courage, intelligence, and trust, but they had proven that they could face any threat together. Ryan looked at Vera and spoke softly. "We are stronger together. We can survive this planet if we trust each other." Vera responded with a few simple words in her language, pointing to him and then to herself. He nodded, understanding her meaning. In that moment, he felt a deep sense of hope. They had faced danger, adapted to the planet, and learned to work as a team. For the first time since the crash, Ryan felt confident that they could continue their journey. The patrols were still out there, but they had survived because they combined human ingenuity and Vera's unique knowledge of her world. The bond they had formed would carry them through the next challenge. As they rested for the night, Ryan reflected on everything they had faced. The patrols, the forest, and the storm had tested them, but they had adapted. They had grown stronger together. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, but for now, they had survived. They were alive, and together, they were unstoppable. The morning sun cast a pale green light across the forest. Ryan and Vera moved carefully, their senses alert. After days of evading patrols,